All right. Hi, everybody. It's Tuesday night, which means that I get the absolute awesome pleasure of co-hosting this Talk Openly show. I'm here with my good friend, Daniel.
Hello.
And if I didn't mention it, I'm Jac. And yeah, I think Daniel and I just love doing this show, and we're excited that we're on Facebook. But also, Daniel, I hear that we may have added some more places to view or listen.
Come on, Jac. You know the truth. You know we are now podcast friendly. So if you don't catch the show live, you can always catch the latest episode or one of the past episodes on either Google or on Apple Podcasts. The name of the show is Lions Roar Talk Openly. You can search for that and you'll find us. Subscribe, like, all that good stuff, okay?
Wonderful. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, and I think we're also on YouTube, right?
If we're not on YouTube yet, we will be soon. Yes.
Cool. Awesome. So with that, Daniel, I'd love to hear about your week. And Dharma.
Yeah. Oh, and Dharma. Oh, okay, good.
Well, it's all Dharma, right?
Yeah, no, it is. Well, we're coming up on 1 month anniversary of me taking refuge.
Woo!
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. It'll be tomorrow, will be officially 1 month. And it's pretty interesting because I kind of called it like surfing the refuge wave, right? Like there was this sort of high, I guess, really high energy, very positive, like everything was like, wow, yeah, this is amazing, magical and amazing and wonderful. And it's always going to be like this. No, just kidding. But it was, I'm not saying anything bad has happened, but, life is becoming a bit more, like returning to some more normal sort of feelings. And I'm like, just normal sort of stuff, right? And I like it. I dig it. I'm like, okay, right. I knew this was coming, like where it wasn't going to be up, like this high the whole time. But doesn't mean that it's negative or anything. No, it's just sort of Sacramento, where I live, has been going through some storms.
Right.
And man, it's wild out there. Like the rivers are super high. There are trees down everywhere. Like so many people, even people I know, have had their houses trashed. I think 12 people have died. Cars just demolished. Street power is still out. So like, street lights, normally when power, like if a street light's out, you'll have like cops or something around trying to, that's not like that. They're out every. It's too much. It's everywhere. And all the crews are out trying to like chop up the trees, and there's just so much damage. And I think that along with that, I think it's affected the psyche of a lot of people around here, like people, they're just thrown out of their usual routine, and just driving through the stuff will kind of set people on edge. I know it does me. And so I think that and just sort of like also, all the holidays are over, New Year's over, all that. And we're like, getting back into the grind. I think all of that kind of stuff is contributing to just a change of pace, change of like attitudes and stuff. And so, but my training is going very well. It's nice and consistent, loving it, really, really digging it. I took a cue from you in terms of my meditation practice, and I just said it's non-negotiable. It's not, doesn't matter. Like those were your words for your own practice, your own training. And so, that's how it is for me as well. I'm just like, doesn't really matter. Like I'm doing this, right?
Yeah,
definitely doing this thing. And I find it really helpful. I noticed, for example, I've noticed a few places like anger and, like some of these sort of more negative emotions sort of popping up. And it's really, it's neat to be able to watch them and then sort of apply what I've learned and then watch as things transform, right? And things become easier to manage and doesn't have to become like destructive or negative. It just is there. And then I'm like, oh, okay, like watch this, turn it around a little bit, and things are better. So I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for, you know, my teacher, my teachings, and the application of all of it. I couldn't be more grateful. So yeah, that's my life in Dharma right now. Yeah.
Nice.
What about you? How's it going for you?
Well, I just want to say I love hearing that, you know, you picked up that non-negotiable meditation practice. And I think what's so cool about that is that, you know, it really hits home to the fact that our lives are constant chaos. And so, you know, we shouldn't practice just because we're like, I feel good, meditation feels good. Or we shouldn't do the opposite, which is I only practice when I'm stressed because I want to calm down, or deal with what I'm dealing with, you know. And so it's that element of kind of depersonalizing it in a way where it's like, you know what? No, it's just what I do. You know, it just is what I do. I do that every day, and rain or shine, right?
That's right. That's right. It's what we're doing. Yeah.
So I really like that. And I think that's a really good start to like a disciplined practice where you know, the Buddha really taught that that discipline is such a huge part of training. And I feel like I hear that word discipline, and we're going to talk about perfectionism later, right? And so something that we might end up talking about is that, you know, sometimes we can take discipline maybe too far, too fast. And that's, you know, we need to kind of pull it back a little bit and say, you know what, discipline can look like I do 15 minutes a day, you know, and then we build up, or I do 6 minutes a day and build up. And so, you know, I think a lot of us start out at these smaller places, but that's actually really important. And we're going to talk more about why that's important later.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. Yeah. But yeah, as for me, gosh, my week's been, I don't know, just kind of fun in terms of Dharma.
All right, come on, give it to us.
I just feel like with a really like consistent practice, and also in the last month, I've kind of bumped it up. My shamatha, I'm doing more shamatha than I was doing before. And something about that, what I think shamatha is doing is really bringing in stability of mind. And I can see my mind becoming just a little bit more realistic about what's actually happening in my world, right? Where it's like that whole thing about depersonalizing is coming back for me again, as I think about it, where it's like, you know, I used to experience what I felt like were these slights, you know, from people, where it was like, oh, that person didn't say hi to me or didn't look at me, or, you know, like, and so I would get that kind of like, oh, like, what the hell? Like, you know, I'm a person, I should be seen, you know? And those types of things happen. And lately, it might even like come across my, you know, awareness, but it doesn't stay. It doesn't have that kind of Velcro like stick that it used to, you know, which is awesome. I love that. Cause like, yeah, that's such a, I can't stand my mind when it's like that, you know, when it's just like, man, like people don't like me or whatever, you know, like, it is, right? And it's like, yeah, there's some people who aren't gonna like me anyways. So like, why does it matter?
Heck, sometimes I don't like myself, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And a kind of funny moment of this happened yesterday at work. As you know, I work at a psychiatric hospital, and there's 3 different inpatient units, and they're kind of divided by level of need. And so that could be, you know, patients have different levels of intensity of what they're going through and whatnot, maybe that more violence or less violence or whatever. And so I was on the unit that was like the most acute unit, and the staff there in general, it's just this kind of like they're kind of like in the grind, they're a little bit like warrior kind of
Yeah.
vibe. It's
Yeah,
just,
they're
there's
veterans,
like,
seasoned veterans.
right. It's the culture is kind of, it's just kind of tough and whatnot. And I come in and I do like my little art groups, or I'll have like one-on-ones with people, and it's fun. And I can get in that vibe too, where I can kind of like mirror people a little bit, like with that stuff. But I was with a client, and she was in one of those wheelchairs where she's got to have restraints because, she's been violent with people before. And so they just do it out of precaution. I have my issues with that stuff, right? But, I just have to go along with it if I want to meet with this patient. So after our meeting, we get done. I let her nurse know, like, hey, this patient needs to go to the restroom. Can you help her get out of her restraints so that she can go to the restroom? And he was like, no, I'm doing rounds right now. And he was sitting there with another nurse, like talking it up, and I get it, it's tough on that unit. Like sometimes you just need a break, like in the middle of it, to catch your breath and maybe make a few jokes, whatever it is, talk about football, and that's what they were doing. They were just hanging out, talking, and he had his like, clipboard for doing rounds. I was like, okay, let me go back and I'll just let her know that you can't do it right now. We'll try and find another time, find someone else. And so I went back and just was like, hey, your nurse is real busy. How are you doing? Can you hold on for a little bit? And she was like, no, dude, I gotta go to the bathroom, So I go back and I tell her nurse, like, hey, I'm sorry, man. Like, she's got to go. She's got to go. And he just like, sets the clipboard down. He's like, like, well, someone's going to have to shadow me. And so then, the other nurse who he was talking to, like, goes off with him. And and it was just kind of a little bit like, not funny in the moment, but it was just like, like, okay, that's where he's at right now.
Yeah.
And it was funny because in the moment, it really wasn't a big deal to me at all. And I kind of said bye to the other nurses. They kind of laughed and were like, hey, we appreciate you, and then I had to go and, get the rest of my day going. So it was just like, boom, boom, I'm out of here. Keep it going. But then it was so funny. This morning, I sit down for my meditation practice of the morning, right? And part of my daily practice is to do some Tonglen. Tonglen is that giving, receiving meditation. And actually, very exciting, next Tuesday, we're going to be speaking with, is it Marie Gillis? Is that how you say it?
I think so, yeah.
So she does the Tonglen practice once a month, a Friday of the month. Is it the second Friday of the month?
It's whatever the Friday after next Tuesday is.
Okay, so. Okay, I think third Friday. But anyways, so we're going to be talking with her next week, and I'm really excited about that. But so I was doing Tonglen this morning, and you start by sending yourself kindness. Then you move out to people that you love, then you move out to strangers, and then you move out to disagreeable people, or, another word might be enemies. And it was so funny because when I got to that last one of disagreeable people, his image just like popped into my mind, right? And then for the rest of my training session, I was like, oh, that's right. Like he did this and he did that and he was mean to me and blah, 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 blah. And I was just watching it happen. I was like, whoa, this is the mind. Like this is the mind on, ego, right? And of course, it had nothing to do with me, right? No. Nothing to do with me.
No. It's not personal.
But it was just so funny to see that mind, and I think be able to look at it a little bit more skillfully than I would have before I met the Dharma. I'm not going to go in there tomorrow and see him and be like, that guy,
Right. Yeah,
it's another person.
how much better to confront that aspect of you, of your ego or your tendencies, in the safe space of meditation, outside of that environment, outside of that context, where within context it's easy to be reactionary and to react to those emotions in a really negative way that then actually leads to more trouble. Like what you just said, the next time you come in, you have to then deal with the fact that oh, that's right, I don't like that person. Right? Yeah. And so instead of that, you still get to see it, still comes up, right? You didn't repress it, you didn't avoid it, none of that. But you sort of like, let it be like water off a duck's back while you were in the moment. But something about the mind, and you didn't let go of it. It just sort of held on to it for like a better time.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. I'm glad that you like reflected that to me, because it's like, oh yeah, the mind is it's starting to work. Shamat is working. Yay.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. There's nothing like a little Tonglen to really ease the troubled waters between us,
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited that Marie's coming next week. Everything that I know about Tonglen, I learned from Marie. And
so same, me too.
Yeah, and I remember doing the practice with her. It was one of the first ones I ever did, like first sort of non-shamatha meditation practices that I ever did. And I just remember thinking like, this is magic. And I have a journal of my experiences, and I have multiple Tonglen experiences that I wrote down where I really was like, this is magic. This is magic. I know it is. And I went in and I told her, I was like, Marie, this is magic. This is what happened. And then she was like, no, it's not magic, man. You're only transforming yourself. It's not like you're actually, it's not like that. Like, it doesn't work like that. But I was like, yeah, it does. It does work like that. Like it's that radical. It's that transformative, that it really does feel like magic.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, there's an element of reality to that feeling of magic, right? When we transform ourselves, it does change how we interact with others. And then, yeah, I mean, allowing ourselves to feel compassion for ourselves and others.
Yeah.
We're going to be different. Right. We're going to hang out with people different. It changes everything.
It really does. It makes things a lot more fluid. It's not so sticky. It doesn't get, we don't get jammed up, right? Yeah. Like it's like a little bit of lubricant. Like it just, like various practices, including just, like a simple exchanging yourself, like putting yourself into their shoes, right? And like really just reflecting, like, oh, what might it be like to be them? Like I had a recent experience with my my children's mom, where I nobody like your ex to trigger, right? And so I had, I was like, man, it was one of these things where I was just like, I'm so angry, I'm so like, and then I was like, I was like, I got to do something here. I can tell this is a destructive emotion, and I know it's not helpful. And it really wasn't. It wasn't Tonglen. It wasn't anything like that. I really was like, okay, I'm just gonna like pretend like I'm her for a minute and like think about that. And it didn't take but more than maybe like a minute or so, and it all just like dropped. And it was like, okay, all right, let's keep on, let's keep moving. A little bit of WD-40.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that we can really just apply the Dharma in our everyday lives, and it can be that small of a moment, and just how much transformation can come out of that. And I think that's actually a good kind of connection point between our discussion tonight around perfectionism and maybe a little bit of overzealousness in practice. Because like you said, there's these ways that we can do Dharma in such, small moments. And yet sometimes we really get it in I'll speak in, I statements. I get in the state of mind where I feel like I need to be doing everything all at once, all the different practices. And I like the feeling of really needing to be on top of my game spiritually. And that can be a train wreck sometimes.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah. So Yeah, I'm curious to know what you think about perfectionism. I feel like you're not a perfectionist, but I'm curious if
Ooh.
maybe it comes out
Yeah, it
in
does.
other ways.
I am so not like in my mind, perfectionism is like not, it's not a thing, right? About me. Like I don't associate that as a character trait. But it's not true. It actually has manifested in a number of different ways. Like I have things like basically, like where I sort of like prevent progress, in all different parts of life, not just spiritually, like even at work, where I'm like, I can't do this until this other thing is done, and that can't be done until this other thing is done, and it has to be done right and has to be done exactly this way. Then I'll have to do that one right. And there's this whole chain of dependencies and towards the goal, that I build up in my mind. And so much of it is, and I just have to do this one thing and I have to do it just right, but I can't do it right. And so none of the goodness comes from it. And then sometimes, like somebody will come along and just kind of slap me a little bit and just be like, no, you don't need any of that. You can just actually just go straight for the goal. It's okay. Like it's okay. What is the saying? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Is that what it is? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I think that's how it's said. It's that sort of sentiment that usually comes up that kind of knocks me back. But I think I've shared this story before, but I'm going to tell it again because it's so relevant to the topic. I had this, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 months ago, where I was having a heck of a time. I had these habits that I couldn't quite break. And I was like, I was really like interrupting. Like I was not being a perfect spiritual sort of practitioner because I was still human. And, and so I got really mad. I was like, I'm trying so hard and I can't, like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what's the point in doing all of this stuff when I just won't give up? Like it's obvious to me, like the light's on, I see how dirty the room is,
Right.
and I'm not picking it up, anything. I just want to flip the switch back off, screw this stuff. I'm not gonna, because I'm not picking it up, right? I'm not doing the work, I'm not cleaning, and I remember, I know I've told you the story, but I went to Lama and I was just like, I'm done. I'm not going to meditate because, like normally when we have Darshan with him, we start by talking about how our training is going. And I came in, I was like, I haven't been doing any training. I'm over it. I'm done. Right. I'm not going to do it. And here's why, right? It's because it doesn't make any sense. If I'm not going to actually, do the work to be a really good person and all righteous and pure and whatever other words you might want to associate with this, then what's the point? Why am I even trying?
Yeah.
And, in his gentle, kind way, he listened to me and my nonsense. And then he was just like, you've fallen into the perfectionist trap. It's just a conceptual trap. That's all it is. And like it's an obstacle. And, and I'm like, well, how do I avoid that? And he was like, just keep training. Like, don't stop, like it's okay. Like, just don't stop. Just keep doing what you've been doing and watching it. That's it. It was as simple as that. And as always, great advice. I took the advice and
and here you are.
So much improvement, so much better. And now I have a non-negotiable meditation practice.
See, that's the funny thing is that I feel like that's the little like paradox, right, of some of these like what did Lama say? What the conceptual trap of perfectionism?
Yes, that's right.
So we get in these conceptual traps that really limit our thinking. It just gets really black and white and rigid thinking, right? And the flip side of the coin of perfectionism is that, if I can't do it perfect, I won't do it at all. I won't do anything. And so that's just the same thing as perfectionism, because there's something in us that believes that we should be able to do it perfect. Yeah. And so then we just drop it all and pretend that, it's not about perfectionism or anything, right? It's just that we can't do it. So and what's so beautiful about, just kind of accepting where we're at, and that wonderful advice that Lama gave, which is like, just keep going. Like, it doesn't have to be forceful. Just keep doing your training.
Right.
And then now here you're in this place where since you've developed, that skill of shamatha, and also that stability within your mind to say, okay, I guess I'm coming to this. Now you're doing this non-negotiable practice, which I think back in the days of perfectionism, at least for myself, I felt like everything needed to be non-negotiable in like a super rigid way. Where it was
Yeah.
like, no, there's no flexibility, otherwise I'm failing, right? So
Right.
it's that same thing of all or nothing thinking, where, man, I just build myself up this world of anxiety
Right.
because I'm like, if I don't do all the things that I set myself up to do, I'm a failure, and I don't want to
Right.
fail, but I'm going to. Um,
It's like it's like this type of like attachment to idealism, right?
yeah,
Which is what perfectionism really is like there are these ideals, and then we become really attached to them. That like our realm isn't perfect, it's always changing, so there isn't anything, like everything is always changing, so there can't be anything that is always going to be a certain way. And
right.
so like when we really become attached to these ideals, then like we become kind of like obsessed, right, like with our fears, what you're saying, become obsessed with our fears and our anxieties and these perceived imperfections, right?
Yeah,
Like we become really obsessed with, we can't see the clear beauty whatever because there's a little smudge, and we become like really fixated on that, and we become really small, kind of tiny,
yeah.
right? And then like kind of things happen that we really would rather not, like we become disillusioned, we become really critical,
Mhm.
cynical. I know that I do. Sorry, I'm just,
Same.
I
Oh,
that's how
same.
it is for me when I fall into these traps and thinking that things have to be a certain way. And the thing is, one of the worst sort of outcomes I think of being overly attached to perfect ideals is that like people don't like us. It's
Yeah.
like nobody really likes a perfectionist, because when we start, we expect it of ourselves, and we expect it of everything else out here, right? Like
Yeah.
that they need to be the way that I imagine the perfect whatever. My boyfriend, my girlfriend, my husband, my wife, my dog, my whatever has to be a certain way. Otherwise, they're not perfect. Otherwise, there's something less than. And that's just a bunch of BS,
Yeah.
right? Like gets right in the way of all the goodness, all the everything
Oh
that
my
we
gosh. Yeah.
we could have. We just throw up all kinds of barriers. We're like, nope, nope, I'm not going to take the good because it's not what I think it ought to be, right? And the
Right.
thing about our Buddhism, or our training and our practices, what we're trying to do is just like see things the way they are, not the way we think they ought to be,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's the whole point of what we're trying to do here, right? Is not to see not to see something that isn't ideal, because that's not the universe we live in,
Yeah.
right? We want to see how things really are. And everything's always changing. It is sometimes high, sometimes it's low, sometimes it's dirty, sometimes it's clean, right? But that awareness of it, that we can be, if we're present with it, if we're really mindfully aware of what's arising, regardless of what it is, whether it's something that is appealing or not, good, bad, whatever you want to call it, that awareness is perfect, right?
Yeah.
Like that alone, that moment, awareness of whatever is arising in the moment, that I think is the closest thing we can get to perfection.
Yeah. Well, and that's the the Buddha's experience of reality is just living in that awareness. And that awareness that, samsara is chaos. And we're not going to find control. We're not going to find all out control within samsara. And for me, I think perfectionism really is very much aligned with control, feeling like I need to have
Oh yeah.
control over the situation, right?
Mm.
Um, and how damaging that is to myself, to my relationships, um, to my spiritual practice. Having
Oh yeah.
control within my spiritual practice it's not
Mm.
a thing. Sure, I'm developing, self-control and but there's a difference. And I actually I had Darshan this weekend with Lama, and he was talking to me about the difference between control and mastery. And I really liked
Oh,
that kind of
share,
like,
share.
yeah, this kind of subtle difference where, being in control, where we say like, I'm on top of it, right? Like I'm on top of my practice. I am doing my practice. I've got it under control, right? That's kind of like this grandiose, like perfectionist state.
Yeah.
Whereas the state of a Buddha, the state of my Lama, I truly believe, is that there's this real incredible artistic even mastery of the senses and awareness, so much so that there is no need to control anything. And what's so beautiful in that is that we can be our messy selves within samsara, because it's messy, and not get trapped by it. A Buddha still, is in this world, experiences pain, right? Because, a Buddha is a sentient being. At least from my understanding, there might be other understandings. But a Buddha has mastery over that attachment, aversion, and ignorance that comes up in response to the different sufferings that we inevitably experience. And so me trying to get on top of everything, it's this real strong urge for me. And I feel it in my relationships, I feel it at work, right? And I really love how the Dharma has started to loosen that a little bit, where it's like, oh, whew, I don't need to have control in this situation. I don't need to know what to do all the time. I don't have to be an expert at something I don't know anything about yet. Like, this is the way my mind works, where, I'll have these delusions that I have to know everything going in, like, because that's what perfectionism and control is all about. And so being able to loosen that allows us to become curious about what's actually happening and what other people can offer us, right? Like, I don't have to have the answers.
That's right. It takes this really narrow sort of view, this tight little view, and it just opens it wide up.
Yeah. Which is it's just like, that's where we all want to be, right? Where we can just trust each other and be interested in what we're all doing. And we don't need any of that stuff.
Nah, we still have it though. But I'm so glad. I'm so glad the way that you were talking about darshan with Lama, and sort of your view of his mastery, right? And it's interesting to me. I'm going to dive a little bit back into that book that I'm wrapping up now, so you won't hear too much more out of me about it. But Words of My Perfect Teacher. So
I just started it.
Okay. Well,
Yay.
you're gonna okay. So so Petrol Rinpoche, who is the author, he dedicates each chapter to his teacher. Right? So there's this dedication at the beginning of each chapter. And actually, I have two of them written down because they're related to the topic. But this one that I want to read, I think this is like how I think you and I probably both feel about our teacher, right? So like, he's talking about his teacher, but this is, I think we can say the same thing about our Lama. So he says, beyond being defiled by the two obscurations, which are negative emotion and conceptual obscurations, you purport to still be purifying them, right? So he's being beyond it. You say you're still purifying them. Having certainly reached the sublime path's very end, you profess to still be learning. Beyond the extremes of samsara and nirvana, you manifest still in samsara. And he says, peerless teacher, at your feet I bow. And that's that part, right? Like you're already there. You did it, right? But wow, you're still here, right? As you said, you're still in samsara. You're here with us, right? And you've already you already did it. You already climbed up to the top of Everest, but now like you came back down, and you're helping us back up, right? Like that just it's just beautiful. I'm gonna read the next one too. This is another
It's good
dedication.
stuff.
So it says, you know the relative to be a lie, yet still you practice the two accumulations, which are wisdom and merit. You realize that in the absolute, there's nothing to be meditated on, yet you still practice meditation. You see relative and absolute as one, yet still you diligently practice. That's our Lama, right? Yeah. And so, that example is something like I've always been, before I really got into it, I remember thinking like, I've never met an enlightened person, right? And I've never even known of a being alive today who claims to be enlightened. Like I don't know. I know there are plenty that probably do, but I just mean like even those who are, that others view as being enlightened beings, perhaps like the Dalai Lama, right? Like they themselves don't claim that, and they themselves are still meditating, still doing Tonglen, still doing these practices. They're still learning, right? So like, you'll hear the teachers whenever, anyone's sort of like talking about like, oh, right, you know all this stuff. No, I'm still learning. I'm still a student, right? And they still view their teacher as, someone that they can learn from. So anyway, I thought those dedications were quite beautiful, because it's something to aspire to, that because, like we think of like perfection as the end point,
Right.
like you're going to get there and then it's over. It's done. You don't have to do anything after that, right? What else is there beyond perfect, right? And so I think that these dedications and this way of looking at it, and then that these teachers exemplify, is such a great model for us to sort of remember when we're falling into these traps, right? Like, oh no, what even is that, right? Even if I did reach perfect enlightenment, at least within our tradition, am I not still going to be here? Am I not still going to be, working with beings in samsara, right?
Yeah, and I think, that is such an incredibly important point when people are looking for a teacher, is that if you find someone who puts on airs of perfection, right, or says that they've got it down, they're it, they know, I think that's a real sign, right, that you're maybe in a cult. And I don't know if you've seen this Netflix documentary about the like Nexium cult.
No.
Might be on HBO actually. It's basically just this business that was started that turned into a cult. It was kind of like a wellness business, but he also had like a sex cult. Crazy stuff, right? But a very obviously intelligent person, like extremely intelligent person, and also very spiritual. Like he could, use words of, Jesus and the Buddha, but just kind of tweak it a little bit, to turn it towards his aims, which were basically to get a bunch of power, get a bunch of money, get a bunch of sex, right? And you can hear in some of these, interviews with the people that were following him, and tapes that they show of him, is that he's just all about control, controlling these people. And anytime people would make a mistake or in some way not express loyalty to him, man, he would just cut, right? Just go like in deep and hurt people horribly. And I think that's a side of perfectionism, right? Where it's like, control to the extreme, so much so, that we think it's okay to hurt people, because what we're doing is like righteous in some way, and we're,
Yeah.
you know, we're deserving of everything that we can get because, you know, we've gotten to this point, right? And so, God, I watching this documentary has been really devastating, because
Mm.
I just imagine, like, you know, how much I've opened my heart to my teacher. And, you know, these people were trying to do the same. And actually, some of them really did open up to this person and were totally just, they're just messed now. Right.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, looking into this has really, I think, deepened my appreciation for spiritual masters who have, you know, so much ability to control, because their level of mastery has gotten to that point where they can draw people in, right, and really start working with them on their stuff. But to be able to hold that with preciousness, right, to be able to hold that this is a precious relationship, and so we're going to take care of it, and it's not about using you in any way. It's been really really good for me to see that and be like, yep, our spiritual masters are really, 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 in so many ways, just holding so much space for us. And I'm just so glad that I can trust my teacher, and that he
Right.
can have that mastery without being a terrifying narcissist perfectionist, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, in some sense, right, look for the teacher whose qualities you want to emulate. And if, you know, I suppose, you know, if what you're looking for is the control rather than mastery, right,
Totally.
then just be careful what you wish for. You know, you might just get it. And that, you know, like I can't help but think that in those you know, like somebody in that kind of a position, like the one that you're talking about, the cult leader, you know, that's how that just feeds into this dualism. I'm perfect, I'm enlightened, I'm whatever, and these people are not. You know, that type of mentality, that alone, it should be a pretty clear indicator that you're barking up the wrong tree if what you're looking for is spiritual enlightenment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, we get into a lot of pitfalls when we do that, the spiritual materialism thing,
Yeah.
where we're, you know, entering spiritual practice, or, you know, even just having spiritual interest, but for what reasons, you know? And I think all, you know, I came into, you know, the temple with all of my, you know, kind of silly reasons, and I still have some of them, right? um but maybe I have a little bit better of an understanding of that. But for example, like, I wanted to feel not depressed anymore. I wanted to have really great relationships, right? Have like the best of relationships, um and those are good goals, right? Those aren't things that, you know, we should be ashamed of, right? Those are things that bring us to the Dharma. And so that those are good things. But when I stay in that place of like, no, this is the only thing that I'm going to get out of this, or you know, that if I don't get that perfect relationship, then there must be something wrong with what I'm, you know, my spiritual practice. Maybe I'm not doing it enough, or I'm not doing it well. And so we get in these traps because we're still stuck in attachment and
Yeah.
aversion land. um and yeah, that's, it's just a good reminder that, okay, um what am I trying to get out of this? And if I'm trying to get just the things of this life, you know, the things that I'm thinking might make me have a little bit of happiness here and there, then yeah, that doesn't feel satisfying,
It's not
ultimately
enough.
satisfying. It's not enough. Yeah.
No, no.
And it's just going to keep us kind of on that roller coaster of
Well,
like, woo, and then shit, and then woo.
right, right. Well, you know, like because what it does is it kind of like you said, there's nothing wrong with, wanting things to be good in our lives,
Yeah.
and to be the best and all of that. Nothing at all wrong with that. But it's this sort of attachment, to it, and attachment to our beliefs about what it looks like when it gets here, that kind of thing, right? So, like I was thinking, I heard it was a teacher from the Thai forest tradition, I think, was talking, and he said something that really struck me. Is like, he was talking about how idiotic it was to believe in, like he was like, yeah, there are peak experiences in samsara. There's nothing, yep, there's nothing perfect about it, but there
Yeah.
are these like peak experiences, really enjoyable, where everything is like rolling and we really are in good relationships and all of that. And that's good. Sometimes that's the result of our training and our practice and our diligence and discipline and all of this good stuff, right? That there are these sort of tangible results in this samsaric world. And that's really good. That can be viewed as progress, right? But he
Mm.
was saying, he's like, but thinking, that there's progress without regress, right? Like he's like,
Mm.
if you think of that, just all you have to do is meditate on your breath, and it'll show you that the in breath progress. How far can you? At some point, you can breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, but at some point you have to breathe out, and that's the
Yeah.
regress, right? Of course they go hand in hand, right? Naturally, like just watch it, right? And I love that, because that is this more gentle, there is progress, there is
Yeah.
movement towards these ideals, right? Like we're never going to, we're not realizing these ideals, not within the samsaric world, right? And making that the goal, having perfect wealth and perfect relationship and perfect mental states, and not just reaching these what we think are these ideal states, but then holding them there somehow. That's just delusional.
It is
It
delusional.
hasn't
Yeah.
ever worked that way for anybody throughout all of human history. There's no evidence of that being true for anybody,
Yeah. Well, and then we die and we can't carry it,
right?
any of it with us.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, the other, there's like sort of another point that I know the words of my perfect teacher just keeps coming up for me, but like there's just so much good stuff in there. I promise I won't spoil the whole thing. There's
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, there's plenty in
But
there.
one of the things that like, so there's a lot in there actually about sort of this motive or intention or the way that we're approaching the path. And there's so many stories of people, that thought they were doing the right thing, that were moving in the right, like, and they were kind of, under like high control or whatever, and it just doesn't work out well for them. They have a moment of anger and they go down to hell,
Yeah,
right? For
yeah,
eternities of many billions of years of burning and suffering, after practicing really hard and being the best Dharma practitioner there ever was. But there's this gorgeous story in there. It's simple, but it's basically, it's very telling. It says, so there was somehow or other, there was like a Buddha statue or some other relic that was in a ditch, right? Like just in the ditch, covered in dirt, rain, whatever, coming down on it. And this poor just guy is like walking by, and he happens to see it, and he's like, "Ooh, like it's not right that it should be raining on there, right? And it's getting dirty." So he goes down, and there's like a dirty old shoe nearby, and he takes the shoe and he puts it over the relic. And within that culture, putting a shoe next to the relic is absolutely no, 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 a bad thing. You would never, ever do that. But he didn't know. He really was just like,
yeah.
oh, like, hey, let's protect it. And he put the shoe there, and he moves on down the road. And then another person, similar person, comes walking down the road, and they also see the relic, and they see the shoe on it, and they're like, "Oh God, the shoe's not supposed to be on that statue or whatever, right?" And so they go down and they remove the shoe, and it says, "Both of them were born into the highest heavens,"
Mhm.
right?
I love that
Because
story. Yeah.
they weren't necessarily doing things perfectly, right? Or even the way that it was supposed to be. But
Right.
it's like, where were they coming from? What was their motivation? What was their
Right.
intention?
Yeah, you get that story just goes to the heart of how important motivation is. Um, and yeah, I'm looking back at times in my practice over the last few years where I've been like that, really kind of like honestly like almost manic state of energy, where I'm like, I gotta do, like, I'm gonna get up at 4 a.m. and I'm gonna do like an hour-long sit with, and then I'm gonna do half an hour of this and like tantra, and then I'm gonna later in the day I'm gonna do these things. And it's just like, like grinding your gears, and it's really kind of, oh, it's hard. And I think about, what was my motivation then? What was going on there? And I really, really see this kind of incessant trying to prove myself to myself, right? Like, and there's nothing to prove. There's nothing to prove. And what I'm doing in the meantime, when I'm in that state of mind, is just poisoning the practice, right? Because actually what happens is that my mind is not available for me at 4 a.m. when I've had 6 hours of sleep, to really get into what the state that produces any kind of good feeling or realization. I'm just sitting there, like, just getting through it, right?
Right.
And so, Lama, when I was doing this craziness, right? He just, he was patient with me. And there was one time where I came to Darshan and I was really disappointed with myself. Because I had stopped waking up at 4 a.m, right?
You naughty Jac.
I know. But what had happened, of course, was that led to burnout, obviously. And I was totally derailed and tired at work, tired in my training. It was all gone to shit, right? And he was like, rather than compare yourself to what you were doing back then, like, maybe just notice how you're feeling right now when you practice now.
Yeah.
And that was just such lovely advice.
Yeah.
And I've really kind of, that's gone to my heart more over the last year since I was dealing with that craziness. And but what's so beautiful is that there's that paradox where I've loosened the grip, and with that loosening, what's happened is that my practice has deepened to the point where now I actually can do, like, I have a large practice, in the morning and the evening, but it's because I really want to be there. My motivation is truly that, I see what this is doing inside of me, and I'm kinder to people, and I can sense people's energies more, and I want to be able to do that for others. And so it's coming from this place of really like genuine, okay, no, this is bodhicitta. I want to do this, right?
Yeah.
And it's just so much better. My sits are better. I'm more interested in what I'm doing. When I actually listen or read the Dharma, I'm like, okay, that's cool. I feel like it's getting in there a little bit, rather than just reading over as though I'm looking at a blank page, right? And so losing that perfectionism has allowed me to actually start on the very early path towards mastery, right? It's so exciting.
I think it's a beautiful, just the way you described it. I mean, like, it's exactly that. It's a perfect description of like the transition between, I think it's probably just phases, right? Like, I imagine everybody who's on the path kind of goes through this kind of stuff, right? Stages where there's this deep, like, wanting and attachment to outcome, and right? And that bodhicitta, that's not bodhicitta. It's not found there, right? But maybe it sprinkles a little something on it. Who knows? And it begins to flourish and then transition. But it's beautiful to watch how the motivation is this deep desire for something way grander than our little selves. It's something so much bigger. And I think that's the thing, part of I think maybe what we sense early on is this vastness, this bigness, this hugeness. We get it. we get this sense, right? Like, wow, there's a lot there, and I don't even have that much time, right? I don't,
Yeah.
and I'm late. Oh, I feel late. You know, I got here late, and I only have this one life, and I got to do it, and I got to do it now. And there's just so much, and I'm just little me and my poor little brain, and I can't learn, and I can't this and whatever, and I have to, right? There's that sort of like, that's maybe what's happening in the beginning. But
Yeah.
then I think that as we get those little pinpricks that Lama talks about, these little things that sort of let a little bit of the light in, and we begin to see that the vastness, yeah, it's there, and it's in that big open space, all of that, it's always there, right? And that really are what we're trying to do here is just to sort of like let the wind or breeze carry the clouds away so we can see that big, bright, colorful sky, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like that. And so like it becomes something different. Like we're not so tight. We're not, as you said, we're not tight. We're not so bound. We're just like open to it. And that allows for an increased capacity. So it allows you to have a really rich practice. I've oftentimes wondered about that. How can somebody like, people who have taken multiple empowerments and who have like, that they're really putting a lot of time into this. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, like what are they giving up instead? Like, how are they doing this? Right. Well, it's because your capacity increases as you let go of that tiny little conceptual trap. And if you imagine, right, like a little animal stuck in a trap, right, like one of those cages that you catch like a little feral animal in or whatever, when it's in there, it can't do much, right? Like it's sort of bound up, and like
Yeah.
it can't do all the things it wants to do. But once it's out, once it's freed of that, then the sky's the limit.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds, I feel like so much of the path, the everything that we're being trained to do, whether it's precepts, if you've taken, lay vows, or, yeah, just trainings in, the 6 perfections, like developing compassion. I think all of those things are about helping us just start taking off some of the binds that we put around us, right?
Yeah.
So we're just like massaging some of those knots around the binds that we've put around us, and then maybe we'll get the tool to clip the bind, and then we'll find our way out. And so it's
Yeah.
like, it's just patience. We're doing it, right?
Well, yeah, we're
doing it.
doing it, but as we begin that process that you're talking about, it's inspiring.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Yeah.
invigorating, because as soon as like, if you've been bound up all your life, right, and in
Yeah.
this tight little whatever, and then you get one hand free, all of a sudden, wow, that's amazing. The possibilities now are like way better, and now I can do something with this one, and there's this process of becoming more free, right? And it's so like, yeah, it's not going to happen like right now, this very second, right? Okay, it takes a little bit of time. It took time to get here. It's going to take some time to get out of it. But like, it's really hopeful, and it's so inspiring, right? Like it makes, at least for me, like like just seeing how much more free I am now compared to not that long ago. I'm like, wow, if that much amazing goodness can come from this little amount of effort, just like I want to like keep going, because there must be like, it's an endless supply.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. It's just like, ooh, what can come next?
Right.
Yay.
Yes, it is. And this is also, it's like not such a negative, like hard expectation of ourselves. It's a
Yeah.
desire for something. It's this wanting, this good. Oh, it's such a I remember a psychological term for this. So like whenever we do things, whenever we act from a a negative locus of control, meaning like it's coming from a desire to avoid or whatever, like, then that leads to sort of negative outcomes. But when we have a positive locus of control, we're wanting to move towards something that's good, then it's usually a positive outcome, regardless of what the outcome is.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Mm. Well, this has been such an excellent conversation, and thank you, Betty, for the comment. Appreciate you. I wanted to end on just a funny joke that I heard today. Our friend Dirk posted a funny comment on Facebook, and it goes like this. Every dead body on Mount Everest was once a highly motivated person. So maybe calm down.
I love it.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
And what's so great is that we are starting the climb, right? We're starting the climb on Mount Everest, but we've got a guide. We're developing the tools. We're getting up the mountain so that we don't get in that perfectionist trap that's just going to get us to fall off and die, right? We just be kind to ourselves. Be diligent with your practice, but don't be mean, right? Don't be mean to yourself.
That's right.
Be gentle.
Love it, Jac.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm really excited to talk with Marie next week about Tonglen, and I hope that you join us. And I will see some of you in person at Lions Road Dharma Center this weekend for the Vajra Yogini Empowerment. And I believe that online registration is still open. So if you haven't done that yet, go for it. It's going to be incredible.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing you, Jac.
Yes, same.
In person.
Yes, it will be fantastic.
Thank you so much, Jac. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.